Well, the question that immediately springs to mind is that you send a mare to a stallion year after year after year, and you'll get a different foal every single year. How is that possible?
Well, each individual stallion has 2 copies of a gene, but he'll only pass on one version of that gene to the foal. The mare will also pass on one version of the gene. You can't predict which version of the gene they're going to pass on. So it's always a genetic lottery what gets passed on. But what you can do is that you can then test and see what has been inherited. So it's basic Mendelian inheritance. Only one factor, one part of the gene gets passed on to each progeny, and different variations. I mean, you're absolutely right. You can have full siblings that are very, very different genetically.
And they're more than just genes for speed and genes for stamina and that.
Yeah,
testing?
Yeah, well, first of all, we've been able to catalogue the sets of genes that are critical for elite racing performance. So genes that enable a horse to perform at group level. By reading the sequence of the DNA code across the entire genome, not just looking at a single gene, we've been able to identify sets of genetic markers that contribute to elite sprinting performance, elite middle distance performance, and elite long distance performance. And these are genes that are involved in heart function, genes that are involved in aerobic metabolism, lactate metabolism, and so on. It's the combination of those genetic factors, that genetic package, that contributes to the genetic potential for an individual to perform at a very high level. Of course, it's not just genetics. Genetics plays a key role, but it's not everything, because the management, the environment, and the horsemanship obviously contributes to how well a horse is likely to perform on the racecourse. But we are able to catalogue sets of genes that contribute to the genetic potential for an individual to perform well.
Okay, you've arrived in South Africa, and obviously you're going to be of some benefit to a number of horse people. How would you interact with people, and what people do you need to see, and how can they get hold of you? And, you know, are you involved here?
Yeah, well, we have clients all over the world. All of the samples that we test are sent to our lab in Ireland, where we do the genetic analysis, except for in Japan, where testing is done in a laboratory in Japan. So I meet with breeders and trainers and owners directly to help them to understand how genetics can inform the decisions that they make. Now, everybody makes decisions throughout the life cycle of the horse, from foal stage to racing stage, breeding, for mares and for stallions. So what we try to do is to help them to integrate this new genetic information into their decision making. In that way, they can use scientifically informed, evidence-based information to better refine the decisions that they're making.
What do you need from the horse? Do they have to go and take a core sample, or, you know, is it painful for the horse to go through?
No, we run the test from a blood sample.
Yeah.
So from the blood we can isolate the DNA and then read the sequence of the letters of the DNA code. So it's a simple blood test.
And you guys do you take the blood back to Ireland, or can you get it done here by a laboratory?
No, all of our testing is performed in our lab in Dublin, in the Equinome labs in Dublin. Samples are collected by the owner or somebody on behalf of the agent or the manager working on behalf of the owner. And those samples are then sent to our labs for analysis. We only do testing with the owner's consent, and the results are returned directly back to the owner. Just recently we launched a new website called equinomesales.com at the Gold Coast Magic Million sale in Australia, whereby vendors submit to us in advance of the sale their draft of horses. We run the tests at no cost to the vendor, and then provide that information on a database on our website. That allows buyers to access that information, purchase that information in advance of the sales. We've had a huge uptake in Australia, and this seems to be, I think, a route forward. At least there's an opportunity then for buyers to access that information before decisions are made. And of course, always with the vendor's consent.
All right, well, The question that immediately springs to mind, I'm a buyer at the sale. I want to now find out about lot 186. What are you going to tell me about that horse when I access your information and pay for it?
Well, we have the three tests: the speed gene test, if the horse is suited to short, middle, or long distance racing. So that will tell you if the horse is likely to be a precocious type, an early 2-year-old performer, or if it's better suited to the long or the middle or long distance races. We also provide the information for the elite performance test, which will provide information about the genetic potential of an individual to perform at group level. We have a third test now, which tests for projected height, mature height of a horse. And so when a foal is born, you can take a sample and you can, with a very high level of accuracy, determine the likelihood of the height that that horse is likely to reach.
So if I've got a horse in training, I'm a trainer or an owner for that matter, and I think that my horse is a classic horse or a group horse and it's not been racing to that potential, would I be able to give you a blood and you'd be able to tell me if it actually is that type of horse or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the beauty of this is, well, that's hindsight. You've already invested time and effort and finances into trying to figure that out. And what we can do is we can test a horse before you as a trainer start to try to figure it out, so we can provide foresight in those decisions.
Well, one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever had to do, and Emmaline, I wish you all the very best here in South Africa and with your travels around the world selling your product. I think it's a fascinating product. Thank you so much for joining us, and everyone knows now how to get hold of you. Equinome.
Equinome, www.equinome.com.
Well, there you go. Go on the website, have a look at this, and this is really breakthrough technology, and we're very privileged on Winning Ways to be able to bring this to you live from the Cape Thoroughbred Sales. The thoroughbred breeders have been involved in getting Emmaline here a couple of times to try and help them breed better horses in South Africa.